Hello everyone, Evasion here and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to share with you my Covenant choice for my rogue going into Shadowlands. This video will largely be from a PvP perspective, but at the same time, I wanted to make my choice so that I'm not useless in PvE as well. Largely, probably M+, and maybe a little bit of raiding, but for the most part, I don't really mythic raid. I have completed some of the mythic raid bosses in the past, but it's not usually something I aim to do. If I do any PvE, I kind of enjoy M+. I did the Keystone Master thing, but I never really climbed keys that high. Mostly was just doing that to feed gear to my character for PvP. Regardless, I will talk about that a little bit. Also, thank you guys so much for 12k subs and likes on the previous video. On the last video, we got over 300 likes. I thought we'd get 100, and on the one before that, I asked for 100 and we got 1,000 likes. The video did exceptionally well, and thank you guys so much. If you like this video as well, please be sure to give it a like, and let's hop straight into the video. Also, after talking about my main choice, I will be talking a little bit about the other covenants, as there is some things to say about them, and because I will play more than one rogue inevitably, I will definitely be making different decisions for the sake of diversity. So yeah, my Covenant choice. On my main rogue, I'm going to be going with Kyrian. And the reason why I'm going with Kyrian is a number of reasons. Number one, I think it looks cool. You know, you got to look cool. And the opener, okay, the ability feels the most natural to play with out of all of the abilities. For those of you guys that played Legion, if you remember our Subtlety Rogue ability, Gormaw's Bite, Kyrian ability is actually very, very similar. Echoing Reprimand. It used to give 3 call points. Now it only gives 2. And the damage it does is really good. With the addition of a Soulbind, I believe Pelagos is the name of it for Kyrian. Pelagos, right here. Combat Meditation. Basically, whenever we use our Echoing Reprimand, it's going to increase our Mastery by 350 for 7.5 seconds. So basically, there is a way to extend this. If you walk through the Sorrowful Memories, which will spawn or whatever, you will be able to increase it. But 7.5 seconds is more than enough for the intro or like the opener damage that we're going to throw, especially in a PvP situation. Not to mention, it's going to kind of pair up really well with a Shadow Dance as it lasts a similar duration. And yeah, I just think that this is good. It's going to increase damage during like a time when we want it. There's no RNG aspect to it, which is something I really like. Another thing I really like about Kyrian is that the Mechanicos guy, basically his path is really good for PvP, at least in my opinion. Braun's kind of troll. I don't really know if this guy does damage or not, but there's some other things here that are good defensively. So if the meta ends up being very fast, then this one will be a good one. Also, during the path that I take on my way down this tree, you will get 2 potency conduits, which is always nice because as Kyrian in PvP, you're going to want to utilize the Soulbind that increases Echoing Reprimand's damage, which is the Kyrian ability, and that is because it's a very, very good burst ability, and it's something you're going to press at the start of your opener. I will go into detail and make opener guides for the Covenant ability in the future. When you get reduced below 35% health, it's going to automatically use your File of Serenity, which is really good. It's kind of like Shamans, I believe, have a talent that procs like HP when they get low. It's kind of the same concept to have something like this, and it's very good for rogue. Yeah, also Soulsteel Clamps. Soulsteel Clamps is fire, okay? This thing doesn't stack with Relentless, so if you're a human and you're going to use the Relentless trinket, it's a little bit less useful. And the fact that you have to stand still for 5 seconds, a lot of people will kind of look away from this, but something they might not consider is if you're stunned, then incoming stuns are probably going to be reduced even further because you are stuck sitting still for 5 to 6 seconds depending on the stun. So Soulsteel Clamps definitely a really good option. And other than that, I mean, having access to Pelagos. If you play Pelagos, File of Patience is pretty good. Big heal over time. We like that. Then the last thing's okay too, but yeah. One last thing about Kyrian before hopping into Necrolord. Basically, Echoing Reprimand scales with Shadow Dance. Shadow Dance has damage increase on it. It scales with talents like Dark Shadow, scales with Night Stalker. It's good that it works with the class. That's key because you can get big crits. I got like a 9k crit in this one game. This was a game where my teammate died and I actually 1v2'd the Sub Rogue and the Windwalker on the enemy team. And I got a 9.3k crit. The overall duration of this game, the duration of that game was about 2 minutes. So to get an extra 10% or 11% damage in that time, not bad. And the reason I want to call attention to that is because I'm going to make a comparison here. All right, so obviously it's hard to make a direct comparison because no 2 arena games are the exact same, but I could probably show a couple different details. Basically, on Necrolord, you have this thing called serrated spalders, and this is retaliation damage. So if they hit you, it puts a little 5-second disease that ticks every second on them. So it inflicts 496 shadow damage to your attacker over 5 seconds when hit at melee range. This thing's actually crazy because if you're getting trained in a game, you're just throwing out additional damage. This would be very good for comps where you have a team that's doing spread pressure like RPS or playing with an Affliction Warlock, something that I could see popping up this expansion. I don't know if this will scale well further into the expansion, but for now, this game that this did 10% of my damage, this was only a minute-long game versus the 2-minute game on Kyrian. So had this game gone for 2 minutes and the situations were playing out, this would have done, probably 12k damage, very similar to what I got out of the Kyrian ability. It's just different kind of damage. Kyrian ability is more bursty. This is more, you're actually punishing people for like hitting you. It's actually pretty cool, and it's kind of cancer. I could see other classes can abuse something like this better than Rogue. Probably a lot of the tank specs. We might see tank specs unfortunately pop up thanks to this serrated spalders. But that's enough talking about this. We're going to talk about the rest of the Necrolord Covenant. The ability, it's fun to play with, but not really from a PvE perspective. Having a bleed that doesn't have a timer, except it does go away after you're out of combat for a certain amount of time, it is definitely fun. I mean, it deals 500 damage. It's not even more than a backstab, but it costs low energy, and if you have one on the target already and you use it again, it is going to give you 2 combo points. So it could lend its strength to builds when you're playing something like Dark Shadow and Subterfuge build, because you have less times when you're actually in Shadow Dance, so the abilities to gain more than 1 combo point at a time could be quite useful. Necrolord is probably tied for second for me, tied with Night Fae, I would say, and Venthyr I'm ranking lowest at the moment from my own perspective. This is largely, once again, from a PvP perspective, and for things like M+, I believe Night Fae is killing it because of some Soulbinds and conduits that I'll talk about in a second. The other thing too, ultimate form on, I believe it's this guy. Yeah, this Marilith guy. Ultimate form is the main reason you would pick the Necrolord Covenant, and that's because while you are channeling Fleshcraft, so like right here, while you're channeling this, you're immune to CC, and then after this ends, you're going to get a 4-second buff that you can move around with, and you're going to be immune to CC during that time. You will be able to do some pretty clutch shit with this, and I think it's the main reason to pick Necrolord, to do fun stuff like that. So I am most likely to pick Necrolord when I do go ahead and level my Blood Elf Rogue on Horde. If I don't decide to go with Night Fae, but I don't know, the pick for Night Fae would largely be for numbers, and also dependent on if you can use the Fox to hop over things like Ring of Frost. It kind of sucks that I don't really want to play 4 rogues, because at some point I'm going to want to play all of the abilities in more PvP situations. So we'll see what happens with that. Alright, for those of you players that are more focused on Mythic Plus and PvE in general, you might want to consider playing Night Fae. If you're not so worried about PvP, I mean, the ability isn't that bad, but as far as I know, it was dispellable in PvP, so that kind of sucks. It does nature damage. But regardless, it's going to remain a solid choice for sure. And the reason why is because of this Kyrian Soulbind here. You got a really big damage increase. It's really good for PvE. Anybody above 75% and below 35%, your damage is increased by 10%. And I mean, that's a pretty crazy throughput increase to have on a Soulbind. Not to mention, you get this one instantly when you get this character, your Soulbind. And at the very end of the tree too, you have First Strike, which is very, very good for situations like M+, where you're constantly fighting new mobs. You'll be proccing this all the time, as long as you're not the one pulling the mobs for some reason, and you get scuffed out of stealth or something. I don't know. It's going to happen. You're going to get this nonstop, and it's very good for things like Assassination, I believe, too, where you'd be like garroting multiple targets from stealth. And yeah, highly recommend this tree if you're more PvE focused and a little bit less PvP focused. That being said, having access to the extra mobility with the soul shape is never bad. So nonetheless, it's still going to perform well. If you were looking forward to play Night Fae, I say go for it. All right, Venthyr. Venthyr is the one I honestly probably know the least about, and I'm going to talk about why I don't think it's going to be the best for PvP at least. Largely, the reason for that, the ability itself actually does some pretty good damage when it works properly. And the reason what I mean by that is you have to apply it, and then you need to do things for it to actually do something. So basically, when you apply it to a target, I can actually just show it real quick. So you use the ability. I think this thing actually hits back. Whenever you use a finisher move, it's going to apply stacks. So I use a finisher, It's going to lash the target a bunch of times. If there's a situation where you use this ability and then you get peeled, you're not going to be able to gain any damage from this ability. And then the after effect where you're gaining haste is more focused on PvE, because more often than not, you can't usually train a target for that long to gain the actual benefits from having it. So that being said, not the most optimal for PvP, but if it does work, it does some pretty good burst damage, and it definitely kind of synergizes well with Subtlety during Shadow Blades, as it can provide some pretty good damage. If you are going to play this Covenant, Service and Stone, this thing, I don't know if they've nerfed this recently, but it definitely, I've seen this slap people when it procs. Yeah, it's pretty troll. Basically, when you die, you leave a stone husk behind, which shatters after 3 seconds. I mean, people aren't probably going to be standing on it, but I think I've seen this hit people for 9k. It's pretty funny. In the same tree, you get Enduring Gloom, so when you use your Door of Shadows, you gain a 15% of shield, or 15% of your max HP shield for 8 seconds, so not bad. And for PvE, you have stuff like Thrill Seeker, which is not too bad. It builds up some haste, which is definitely always welcomed in PvE. Haste is nice for damage increase. Not so much for subtlety, but I mean, it'd still be pretty good. If you're not even building haste, gaining haste is going to be kind of a greater value anyway. So it's kind of good in that sense. This tree is definitely good for casters because it has interrupt, snare, and root effects are reduced by 25%. I really like that as a caster. It's not breaking any boundaries. It looks cool. I kind of wish it was better. If you want to play Venthyr, I'd still say go for it. It's definitely not horrible. So yeah, that's probably going to do it for that video to avoid it running on for too long. So just to recap, my choice is going to be Kyrian. If I have an alt rogue, which I will eventually on Horde, it will likely be Necrolord, because I think Necrolord is also sweet. So if you were excited to play Necrolord, definitely play Necrolord. I think the less likely choice is that I pick Night Fae, and I probably won't be playing Venthyr, at least on my rogue. Fortunately, I'm going to be playing multiple characters, so I will hopefully, between all the characters I'm playing, get to experience all of the Covenants. And I think that's going to do for this video. Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please be sure to give it a like. Thank you so much for all the support again, and we'll see you guys in the next video. I'm going to try and get up another video before Shadowlands launch, because I have a feeling it's going to be a little hard for me to want to upload when the expansion first comes out, because I'm going to be so excited to play. But until next time, guys, I hope you have a good day, a good weekend, and please enjoy the launch of Shadowlands. See ya.